Hey, what's up? It's your boy. So, today I was reading the Book of Mormon, and I found a couple of interesting things in there that ultimately disprove the Mormon faith. So, hopefully, there's no Mormons watching this, and let's just get right to it, shall we? So, I was extremely happy to find out that this was not just a religious text, but also a picture book. So, I opened the guide of pictures, taking a look, and I look at number 7 here. Jesus Christ visits the Americas. And I go to myself, no, he didn't. What are you talking about? So, let's find the image, shall we? So, I turn to the image, and we see this. Forgive my lamp. There we go. So, this is what we see. It appears to be Jesus Christ, entirely fully grown as an adult, and this pyramid in the background implies that we are in probably the Aztec capital, or the Aztec Empire to some extent. Now, this makes absolutely no sense, as the Aztecs weren't around at this time period, or at least not around in the known world. So Jesus shouldn't have known about it, really. Otherwise, he would have told people. But let's take a look here. So first we calculated the distance between Nazareth to Mexico City. This is about 7,752 miles. So the first issue would be, how did Jesus travel to Mexico City within his lifetime? And that's a really good question. So we have a couple of options. Airplanes weren't around and were never referenced in the Bible, so there was no airplane and Jesus couldn't fly. Then, he couldn't have taken a boat because there's no historical telling of a boat that made it over there, and God can't create his own boats, as we all can remember Noah's Ark. So, the only logical conclusion is that Jesus probably walked all the way to Mexico City. He can walk on water, I'll grant him that. So, we're assuming that he's walking 7,752 miles. Then, there's no evidence in the Bible of Jesus being able to walk at superhuman speeds or teleport in any way possible. This would show up in Bible canon if this was canon. Also, if Jesus could move at superhuman speeds, then there would have been at least some hints of a world speed record or some hints of his speed coming out of Israel. But, as we know, Israel's not world famous for athletes. And even if he could go super fast, he would have had to take over materials for the entire trip, because Jesus himself in the Bible had to eat and drink. And even if he can turn seawater into wine, he still can't drink seawater or wine to sustain himself. This means ultimately that Jesus probably would have needed a giant pack full of food and water that he couldn't necessarily have ran while carrying this pack, otherwise it would have sloshed around. So we're going to assume that his land speed is about 3.1 miles per hour walking on the ocean. Now, we did a brief calculation of this. The amount of time it would take him to walk continuously, 7,752 miles. Here, actually, I'll just do the calculation here so you know I'm not lying. So, 7,700, what was the number? And 52 miles divided by 3.1. He would have walked for roughly 2,500 hours. Let's divide this by 24 so we can get a feel of how many days. We're looking at 104 days that Jesus would have had to walk, and he would have had to walk back. So we're looking at about 208 days. Now, if you really wanted me to prove any of his miracles or whatnot, if you look at the Bible, all he's really good at is healing magic and turning water into wine and walking on water. There's literally nothing in the Bible canon that says he can do anything otherwise. His control over nature that the Bible attributes to him only is about turning water into wine, walking on water, feeding stuff, and calming storms. And he cursed a fig tree at one point. But none of these could have essentially got him across the ocean. So, we're at 104 days back and forth, and the time he would have spent in South America. But he was a devout Jew. And according to the Torah, God commands that all Israelites have to return to Jerusalem 3 times a year. And this could not have possibly worked within that 200-day span. There would have had to either be Passover, the Feast of Weeks, or the Festival of Booths that he would have had to be in Jerusalem to attend. He didn't miss a single one of these because he was very devout in his religion. This means that there's no time for this to have happened. Now, a lot of Mormon sects and a lot of Mormon scripture says he went there after the resurrection, but we will find very shortly that this cannot be. If you look at the Bible story where Jesus ascends into heaven, he's down there talking to his disciples days after becoming resurrected, and like roughly 50 days after being resurrected. He stayed a little bit and walked around to show people that he was still alive. There's no hint in the Bible or any records of him going anywhere for a long period of time. At the end, he literally ascends back into heaven, right? He'd showed himself around for 40 days, and he literally goes into heaven. He begins going up into heaven, as you can see here. Then a cloud rises, hides him from sight, and the disciples don't see Jesus again. Jesus goes to heaven, and he begins to rule over his followers on earth from there. So we have extremely concrete evidence that the Mormon faith is completely and utterly false. There's no way Jesus could have made it to South America. Even if you still don't believe me at this point, then there would have to have been at least some record of either Europeans and people in the Middle East knowing about the Aztecs, or the Aztecs knowing anything about the Christian faith, but they don't. Their first introduction to the Christian faith is when the Spaniards come over, especially when Cortez comes over, because they confuse him for a god. They wouldn't have confused him for a god if they'd literally seen a god already and knew that Jesus was there. They wouldn't have stuck to their same religion. So, we've taken up about 6 minutes. That's pretty much all I want to talk to you about today. So yeah, Mormon faith probably isn't real. Even if the Mormon faith is real, then this could at least be getting onto a lead that Jesus might have some sort of supernatural powers not brought up in the Bible, which would make him a far more formidable foe for somebody to have to go up into a fight against. But I really, really doubt it. We haven't seen Jesus in a fight yet, so it's plausible, but probably not. Thank you.